Thumbtack presents Tile Trouble. Every single time I use my sink, I make eye contact with the uneven grout on my kitchen backsplash. The crooked corners eye me, and I'm haunted by more tiling questions than I thought possible. What kind of pro can fix a backsplash? Can I replace one cracked tile, or should I replace them all? What if I just use Thumbtack? I can hire top-rated pros, read reviews, and compare prices with a tap, all on the app. Thumbtack knows homes. Download the app today.
Looking for music that lifts your spirit and fills your heart? Experience the powerful sound of the Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square. Now streaming on all your favorite music platforms. Find the Tabernacle Choir on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, Amazon Music, and Pandora. Let the music of the Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square inspire you today and every day. Whether you're at home, in the car, or on the go, enjoy the beauty of their world-renowned sound anytime. The Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square, streaming now.
Nobody brings you better coverage of the teams you're passionate about than these guys.
Try some more.
This is DJ and PK on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
DJ PK, we're joined now by Chancellor Johnson, Big 12 host. Chancellor, good morning. I want you to know I think you're getting a raw deal here.
Good morning, fellas. Why is that?
Well, because there's a certain schedule, and we all know how this works. March is about the madness, and you've got to work a lot then, right? April is about spring football. You got to work a lot then. May, softball and baseball playoffs, 64-team tournaments, lots of Big 12 teams involved. June is about vacation. July is football media days. August is camp. September, the games are on, and the schedule takes care of itself. June's about vacation. What are you doing chasing this Texas Tech nonsense all around, having to read all this stuff, talk to all these people, and try to keep up on this? This is crazy. This is your vacation time, Chancellor. You're getting a raw deal here.
I am, but listen, I have always had a good work-life balance. I'm still taking my vacations, right? I'm still going out and enjoying my time with my wife, my family, and friends. But yeah, it's a mess down there in Lubbock, and we'll see how it shakes out. But you know, it's certainly a mess over at Texas Tech.
Well, Chancellor, you're home, and I know your work ethic is so friggin' strong, and you may be saying, what are you talking about, that idiot up there in Salt Lake? Well, brother, there was a time, and I call you brother because you are my brother, a time well before your time, but nevertheless, a time when I, too, walked the campus of Arizona State because I am an Arizona State grad, my brother. So welcome.
For sub, I like you guys already, particularly. Absolutely, yes, sir.
The audience is so sick of Sun Devil stuff with him. He searches in everybody's bio. We got a devil here. I even told him a couple minutes ago in the break. You know this guy's a devil, right? And he's like, "Oh, I know. I'm on it."
Well, I imagine you were probably doing your thing out there in Tempe. You had a great time, as did I back in my days at Arizona State. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and I was born back east, but I moved to Phoenix for high school, so it's my home too. I mean, nice. My wife's actually one of the rare natives of Phoenix, and so that's where my roots are. I was just there last week, as a matter of fact, at a family wedding. So they run deep, and I've followed the Cronkite grads as they've scattered in their jobs and so forth. So, and I see them, and especially with social media, it's easy to follow. And all kidding aside, they do have an excellent program to train people, and you're
the best. I got to stop you there. The best.
If you want to go the best, I'm fine with that. But I know that you trained, and you were trained well, and now you're reaping the benefits of that, and that's a cool story. And so here we are, we're talking about, and you're eyeball deep in basketball, and we want to get into that because there's a couple of players in the Big 12 that could go 1-2, and it's affecting our Utah Jazz. So there's a local story, and I've been around for a long time. I was there when they were a Pac-10 school, obviously, and here we are with Utah being in the Pac-12. Now they're in the Big 12, and I've covered all these media events. And the thing that makes me, I don't know what the word is, but it's not something. I want to go to the Star in Frisco in about a month and talk about football, but I'm wondering if the whole thing's going to be hijacked by this Texas Tech Brendan Sorsby thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think so, and especially after what we have seen played out over the past couple of days. Coach and a lot of the members of that Texas Tech program were here in town in Houston, where I'm
Yeah,
based in,
right.
for the Houston Touchdown Club, and they didn't take any questions from media. They just kind of spoke to the alumni. And then yesterday, releasing that 22-minute video, which I did not watch.
I've
I'm
watched it.
sorry. Look, I was enjoying my vacation. You mentioned some of that work life. I mentioned some of that work life balance. I've been able to read enough of it, but yeah, the thing is, it's not going away, and they can try to kind of gaslight people and act like it's hey, we're helping this kid, and I think, look, get Brendan Sorsby his help, but that doesn't mean he has to be on the football field while he does that as well. That's my personal stance on it. But as we get into Big 12 media day, as we get into the season, as I just mentioned, this thing's not going away, and Big 12 programs and the coaches and athletic directors, they're clearly making sure that it does not go away unless Brendan Sorsby does, and he doesn't play on the football
Good
field.
point. Yeah.
I think the fact that you're in Houston is really interesting because in Lubbock, I can imagine everybody's rallying around Texas Tech. And you go to, Wasatch Front, Utah and BYU fans are just shaking their head like, this is a rare time Utes and Cougars can agree. They're like, how is this possible? How is that court decision possible? But in a place like Houston, where there are a lot of Tech people, and we've seen the Attorney General, I wondered if there were any politicians who were going to stand up to Texas Tech, and the Attorney General is going to stand shoulder to shoulder with them. There've got to be a lot of Texas and Texas A&M fans there who are shaking their head thinking this is horrible in Houston, but there's probably also a bunch of Tech fans there. What is the vibe there, and have anybody got any insight into how money and power in Texas might influence how this goes forward, if at all?
Well, money and power in Texas, they go hand in hand. And so, yeah, like it rules a lot. And we see that with Cody Campbell, kind of leading things over there with that athletic program and the influence he's had on the Big 12 since he's really, kind of taken over there, in Lubbock. And so, as far as Texas Tech fans, they're riding for their guy. And obviously they have playoff and championship aspirations, and they believe that they can get there, with Brendan Sorsby, while, everybody else outside of Lubbock and everybody else who is not a Red Raiders fan understands how when you gamble on the game and you're a player, the precedent has always been you can't play. And so now with Texas Tech trying to find these excuses and make it seem like, it's not that. Once again, anybody outside of being a Texas Tech Red Raiders fan, they're not buying it. And the thing is, I'd rather they just kind of stand on it instead of trying to make people kind of, try to convince them that this is going to be right. I will say, however, though, the thing is that Brendan Sorsby is supposed to be eligible to play potentially by week 3.
Yeah.
And so who do they play? The Houston Cougars. So I think U of H has a lot of fans that will be rooting for them if that is the case, if Sorsby does end up playing.
Yeah, there you go. That's for sure. No doubt about that. Coming from the East Coast when I was younger, much younger, and older family members and extended family, I know gambling is such a big deal. And I learned it's harsh to say, but when it comes to gambling, when hardcore, and in this case, a self-admitted addicted gambler, as the Texas Tech people said in that video, and I watched the entire thing.
Good for you.
I know I'm cautious about trusting them when they're talking about gambling because they're gamblers. And I learned you don't necessarily believe what they say. And so on one hand, they're going to tell us, oh, this is an addiction, and we're trying to help this young man, which is great. Everybody likes that. But on the other hand, they're saying, oh, and they told us in the video, they've put limits, parental guidance, basically, on the phone, so he can't look at different websites and whatnot. So they're sort of assuring us that this won't happen. Well, my experience, if you have addiction, you cannot assure us anything because it's an addiction. So they don't even realize that they're talking out of both sides of their mouths because it's an addiction, so we're here to help. But we know addictions, people fall off, but yet they're basically telling us, oh, no, this won't happen, and we're going to love him to death, so we'll make sure. And I don't even think they understand that that is a contradiction of logic right there.
Yeah, obviously he does have a problem, and I think it's great that Texas Tech is getting him the help that he needs. With that being said, that still doesn't answer the question of why he should play. Because if it was anybody else, and it was funny because Cody Campbell had made the argument that if people are just whether if it was Texas, University of Texas, or LSU, that they want their guy to play. But if it was anybody else, and if it was somebody else, Texas Tech, they would not want it to be that way. And so they're making excuses for their guy. And as I mentioned, it's great that they are getting the help that he needs, but that doesn't absolve him from facing the consequences. And I think, for Brendan Sorsby, he should have a football future. I think, he can still go on and play in the NFL, and he has the talent to do so. To me, it's just not in college football.
Yep.
We're joined right now by Chancellor Johnson, Big 12 host, and PK mentioned you got a lot of basketball on your Twitter feed. I couldn't help but notice the photo at the very top of your Twitter feed is you sitting there with A.J. Dybantsa. And obviously the Jazz have the number 2 pick in the draft, and people here are really locked in on this. What have you heard? What do you know? What do you think from dealing with him and covering the Big 12 and Peterson? If you had the number 1 pick, what would you do?
Great question. So for me, first, I got a chance to get to know both guys over this year covering the Big 12. And that started out in that picture. That was at Big 12 Media Day for basketball. And so that was in the ESPN broadcast. And, Darryn Peterson and AJ Dybantsa, the personalities are completely different. Dybantsa rushes being kind of that star guy, but he is a basketball guy first, right? He's not somebody who is necessarily like caught up all in the media and being the superstar, but he certainly is okay with embracing that. And versus Darryn Peterson, he's a lot more reserved. He's low key. But the thing about Darryn Peterson is he certainly has a quiet confidence about him. And so while AJ Dybantsa certainly has, made it, not a secret that he wants to be number 1, so does Darryn Peterson. And, they both have, great talent. If you ask me, I think Darryn Peterson is the more talented player. And, when I watched him, he's just such a special player. He has great touch. He can shoot it. He can get downhill. He can create for others. He plays in the passing lanes. And so he's a star in his own right. Great talent. And then with AJ Dybantsa, he has something that you can't teach, and that's some of that size and that athleticism. I had a chance to watch him in person multiple times this year. I made a trip out to Waco where BYU was playing Baylor, and BYU was they had like a 3-game losing streak. And AJ Dybantsa kind of told me after the game that he's not used to losing coming from high school. And so he had a big game where he had 30+ points, and nobody wearing a Baylor uniform could guard him. He had it anywhere he wanted it. It was like Burger King, have it your way, right? And so he was a mismatch problem. And we saw that throughout the year. But when I watched, Darryn Peterson, it was just something about him to where, once again, his ability to put the ball in the basket quickly. He heats up. He's more of a defender than AJ Dybantsa. But the thing is, if I have the number 1 overall pick, with that being said, I can sleep very, very well. If I go up there and I pick AJ Dybantsa, I'm sleeping very well. With Darryn Peterson, there is a little bit more of a risk factor, as we saw this season where he missed 11 out of the 35 games this year. And so, you can't go wrong either way. But, if it was me, I think that Darryn Peterson is the more talented player, but with the risk factors involved, I can't miss if I'm the Washington Wizards. As far as I can't afford to miss that pick, I would probably go, even with believing that Darryn Peterson is the more talented player, I don't think there's a big enough gap. And I would probably take AJ Dybantsa if it was me with the number 1 overall pick in DC.
Thumbtack presents Tile Trouble. Every single time I use my sink, I make eye contact with the uneven grout on my kitchen backsplash. The crooked corners eye me, and I'm haunted by more tiling questions than I thought possible. What kind of pro can fix a backsplash? Can I replace one cracked tile, or should I replace them all? What if I just use Thumbtack? I can hire top-rated pros, read reviews, and compare prices with a tap, all on the app. Thumbtack knows homes. Download the app today.
You take Dybantsa, then do you voice the concerns, and we all know what they are with Darryn Peterson. And, I saw AJ play in person many, many times throughout the season, obviously, in and out of town. I was there at the NCAA tournament. I like his personality. I'm a little concerned about this sort of like everywhere you turn around, he's being interviewed at the French Open, I think it was. I was like, kind of wonder about being in the gym. But nevertheless, if they do take Dybantsa, those concerns that you have for Darryn Peterson are there, and the Jazz are drafting second. But I'm thinking, for me, I take a shot. What do you think?
Well, I want to go back to what you mentioned as far as AJ Dybantsa. While, yes, he does embrace being on camera, the funny thing is, when I got a chance to talk to him, whether it was the first day at ESPN Media Days, talked to him when he was in Waco, I had a number of opportunities to talk to him through the Big 12 tournament. I've had a chance to develop a relationship with his dad. I want to be clear. AJ Dybantsa is a gym rat. And so I think he has a camera with him. He's because he embraces being in front of the media. He does a lot of interviews and he's not shying away from that. But AJ Dybantsa loves to play basketball. Matter of fact, he skipped his prom because he wants to stay in the gym and just hoop. Obviously when he went out to BYU, he embraced the culture there, but he's a basketball guy first. So I want to be clear on that. And he kind of has joked about it as far as I fill seats. And so as I mentioned, he embraces kind of everything that you want and being a number one overall pick, as far as he will sell tickets, right? He will certainly embrace the community, because if he, as a guy who's from Boston, and he was able to be very, very comfortable, in Provo on that BYU campus, he's going to be good wherever he goes, whether that's staying in the state of Utah or going out to DC. He's going to be great there. As far as, Darryn Peterson goes and the concerns with him, it's just hard to pass up on that talent as well. And so, I will say he got a bad rap over the course of the season, and I understand some of the concerns, but the thing is, I feel like a lot of people who watch the NBA, they might not be watching college basketball throughout the year, so they do go into what are kind of just the headlines, what's being reported out there. And one thing I learned about Darryn Peterson is he certainly is a competitor, and there was questions about, like, did he want to play, did he love the game, did he want to be out there in Kansas? But I'll tell you one thing, and granted, in this game he did have a minutes restriction, and so he didn't play in the second half. But when he matched up against AJ Dybantsa in Lawrence, Kansas for that game, the one time they played this year, he whooped AJ Dybantsa's behind. And he went at him too. There was times where the first play of that game, it was a one-on-one opportunity on the wing. He went right at him, drove by him for a layup. And then defensively, he took on the challenge, even though he was a smaller guard, even though AJ Dybantsa has size on him. He took on that matchup in that first half before he ended up sitting in that second half. So there's a lot of misconceptions about him because he didn't really speak to the media. And I had a chance to chat with him, and I just put out one of the rare interviews we've seen from him, this following, as we live to this draft, where he was talking about, he called himself a antisocial loner, and he said, I didn't actually mean that, right? He just said, I just kind of grew up, my dad, growing up with my dad, he kind of taught me to keep things to myself, and so I didn't run to the media, I didn't really express how I felt. But the thing is, I do know Kansas, his teammates, they did really like him. He is a competitor, and if you do draft him, that ceiling there, he might have a higher ceiling than AJ Dybantsa just overall with that talent.
Probably the best case I saw made for him was, I think it was The Athletic, did a story where they must have talked to 15 people who'd known him forever, and people had seen him in AAU, high school, and even going back before high school. And I'm like, this year's crazy because we've never seen anything like this with him. There's no hint of him. They never would have guessed it would have happened. The whole sitting 11 games and pulling himself out of games, it came out of nowhere. Do you think that is an agent-driven thing and it's a money thing? Protect yourself. This isn't about college. It's about next year in the pros. And so while it's true and it's real, is it a lousy predictor of the future?
From what I've been able to gather from Darryn in the few times I've had a chance to chat with him, I don't buy the fact that it was an agent thing or he was pulled for money. I just don't. I think there was something that was actually wrong with him. Now, could he maybe have given it more of a go? There could be there's maybe an argument for that, but just willingly, he just sat because he didn't want to play in games. I just don't buy that, especially when you consider, both AJ and Darryn, they knew that they're only spending 1 year in playing in college, right? And for Darryn, talking to him at ESPN Media Day, that was one of our conversations of he was really looking forward to playing in Kansas and joining a brotherhood and a legacy of that program. And so obviously it didn't work out the way that that I think many Kansas Jayhawks fans would have hoped, and neither did Darryn Peterson. And I do believe that some of the conversation, it probably did get to him, to a certain point. And the way he could have combated all of that was to either A, get out there and play, or B, use his voice a little bit more than he did, throughout that season, because he was quiet and he did allow narratives to fester versus, maybe pushing back on that. And just in general, his demeanor is very reserved. He gives me a little bit of like a Kawhi Leonard vibe, right? But the thing is, he if you talk to him, he is really funny. And if you ever, see Kawhi Leonard, the teammates would joke that got a little sense of humor to him. That's the same thing with Darryn Peterson. And so, obviously it has been a concern, and it has, been a conversation leading up into this draft. I think obviously once you get there, you get to the highest level when it comes to the NBA. I'm not as concerned as maybe other people are, but it is a risk that you have to consider, and that's where we are today as far as in that debate of AJ Dybantsa and Darryn Peterson.
Brett McMurphy has his predictions in the Big 12. They got the Devils. Brett has the Devils 10th. They're sleeping on us again, aren't they?
They certainly are. But look at the job that Kenny Dillingham has done, over the years since he's been there. And so I certainly trust in Kenny Dillingham. He has to replace, two great talents. Obviously, Jordan Tyson getting drafted by the Saints. And then, with their quarterback and Sam Levitt going to LSU. Listen, man, I'm so disappointed with the way that played out. With Sam, winning the Big 12 his first year, teaming up with Kenny Dillingham, getting him to the playoffs, and then now just bolted to LSU, and he has to do what's best for him. So I'm not mad at him for that, but it is a shame that a guy like Sam Levitt, he would have been a guy that would have had his name, up there, up to some of the other greats that we've seen at Arizona State. So it's disappointing to see him gone, but I'm super excited to see what Kenny Dillingham does this year. As you mentioned, they are, they haven't been picked, as far as or has as much hype this year, but they're going to be good, once again this year. And then even with me being here in Houston, the job that Willie Fritz has done, since he's taken over, man, how good has he been? And now they're set up to be a contender in the Big 12. They're a team that I wouldn't be surprised, especially with what's going on, at Texas Tech. Maybe they can sneak in. And then, of course, Kalani Sitake, the job that he's done over there in Provo as well. I think it's, Texas Tech, BYU, and Houston are some of the teams that I'm looking forward to this year as we get into football season.
Chancellor, we appreciate all the takes and the time. Thanks for joining us. Keep that work-life balance going in June. It'll get busy soon enough.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me on, guys.
All right, Chancellor Johnson joining us, Big 12 host. Take a break. When we come back, Chris Vanini from The Athletic. The news is breaking this morning. We're seeing reports now that the University of Utah deal with Otro Capital is done. It's been finalized, PK. How about that?
Yeah, I'm reading it right now.
All kinds of stuff going on. DJ and PK back after the break right here on The Zone with Chris Vanini.
That sound could mean a lot of things. And when something's going wrong at home, the hardest part can be figuring out what the problem actually is. At Thumbtack, you can upload a voice message or a photo, and our AI-powered search will help diagnose your project. Plus, the pros we know have over 14 million five-star reviews, so you can hire with confidence. Thumbtack, we know homes. Hire the right pro today.
Summer is all about freedom, fun, and growing up. And between the ages of 9 and 13, kids are starting to form their views about alcohol. With more independence, their still developing brains need more guidance and support than ever. That's why summer is the perfect time to stay connected and plan fun, safe family activities together. Research shows kids who spend quality time with their parents doing what they enjoy are less likely to drink underage. And when kids feel close to you, they're more likely to listen, especially when you set clear expectations. In fact, kids who drink before 15 are far more likely to struggle with alcohol later. This summer, create a no-bummer summer with fun, alcohol-free activities for your kids. Go to summer.parentsempowered.org to take a quick quiz and discover ideas tailored to your family. A little time together can make a big difference. For more information and to learn more about how to prevent underage drinking, visit parentsempowered.org.